Hey y'alls, this is Solomon Rambling, and today you're finding me playing once again Angels of Death. I'm not actually playing because if you had read my video journals, I talked about how I wasn't providing the best commentary that I thought I could. So this is all content that I have previously recorded, and now I'm watching it along with all of you to provide like kind of video commentary you'd find on a DVD. I'm not that fancy, but I can at least pretend I'm up there with all those big name people. So right now we're in the second chapter, or basically the fourth floor that we've come to visit of this basement complex. I had higher hopes when I was playing this because this is theoretically a second installment of the game that's all packaged in the Switch version. And so I was thinking maybe the developer was able to implement some more gameplay. I guess gameplay is the major thing because I felt like the previous entry was just walking around and interacting with everything. So, and I hopes one thing that you'll probably see eventually is that the translation is still garbage, and they say some really weird shite. Definitely a lot of involvement of peepers still. I don't know why they're so insistent on calling eyes that, but you know, that's the name of the game. So we're stuck in this cell to begin with, and it's a lot of story, so to speak. And you still find that Zack is as foul-mouthed as ever and dumb, and Rachel is still this emotionless, little girl. So right now we already have set up the stage for a sort of Saw-esque level. You saw right there that there was a trap when someone tried to leave the room and they get shot at. But of course, they're both alive because main characters don't die. And if you do, you get loaded back to the previous save. So I don't quite like this trope as much. The other characters themselves, I don't think were extremely creative. We've seen a lot of these archetypes. Again, you have the deranged killer that is Zack that began us all. And then I believe his name was Dr. Danny on the second floor, where again he's appears to be this intelligent doctor who's caring, but has this one little aspect to him that's totally screwed up, which is his obsession with pulling people's eyeballs out. And while that may be a little unique, that's an archetype I've seen many times before, and it kind of creates an unsettling nature of, oh, you care about this person's here for you, but wait, they're gonna kill you. Yeah. The third part, we saw the little demented child who has this kind of justice complex. And although that hasn't been used as much, I've seen it in quite a few animes. The idea that you have a small child that is evil is, I guess, unsettling. Not to level like The Grudge or The Ring, but it comes off ultimately as this kiddo is traumatized. So now we fall on this one, which is the Saw ripoff, as we'll see later. There I was trying to figure out if it was actually a cutscene still. But we get into it. We're on this floor, and as you'll see, I am necessitantly trying to find every possible way that I can go because I could progress the story, but I also want to get into every room so I don't have to backtrack. But of course, in this case, it's that you need to click on the right context-sensitive object, and then you're able to progress. We got another element of sinners right now, so the whole religious overtones are here, front and present. We have that on the last level, we have it here, and of course Rachel is obsessed with God in some way. We don't know about her mysterious past, but it's assumed that she's killed somebody, probably her parents. So, right now at this process, I do my due diligence to check everything. And we get another little character element out of this. So, I do think it's a little heavy-handed. What you're seeing here right now is the main villain right here is trying to paint us as criminals and that she has to punish us. And so what do? You get a mugshot to begin with. So it's heavy-handed, but you know, we'll play with it. And Zack, I do agree that it is kind of bullshit, but we gotta continue. So at this point, I was wondering if the mugshot was another trap. Usually this game doesn't try to kill you in random sections because every time there is a section where you could die, it allows you to save. But you know, I am used to cheap shots, and so I'm going to be prepared for that wherever that may come. So again, checking every darn thing I possibly can. And so they're learning how to use a camera. Then we learned that Zach has never had his picture taken, probably because he's not very photogenic, what with all those bandages wrapped on his face. I imagine it's not due to plastic surgery, although that would explain why he has no nose. But we'll start off and get our picture taken, like voila. Yep, there we go. We start off with that. He's angry. And this is another aspect that we see with Zach and his little jig right now that we see, is that he is very impatient and very angry, and it's kind of one note. I would expect someone of his demeanor to eventually tire out. I have not seen quite any child that's able to maintain a temper tantrum for that long. There we go. We get our pictures going, and we move on. One of the challenges with this is I originally had recorded this video, I would say, about 4 weeks ago. My intention was to immediately provide this commentary, but that's not something I was able to get to due to, other responsibilities and whatnot. Also, we never returned to those 2 locked doors. Just to let you know, nothing occurs with that. We're going to stop with my personal life for a bit and focus on this because it's interesting that we have maybe some explanation of what's going on. Each of these little pictures shows something that we're going to experience. And it's interesting in the sense of foreshadowing, but ultimately doesn't provide much. So right here, we're now given the chance of either eternal imprisonment or go through a variety of punishments in order to gain our freedom. And so they're having their witty banter. But going back to what I was talking about, as now watching this again, it's about as new for me as it comes to you all. I have the basic mechanics down, but in the sense of how the dialogue went, it's a little fuzzy for me. That's a bummer, because you want to be able to know immediately afterwards, have pre-prepared jokes, but again, we're practicing, and the most practice we can get is the best practice. So, essentially, we're just learning all about the prison. Ugh. At this point, I wonder if I was able to go through the dialogue faster. It's developing tone, so to speak, but we already know this is a kind of game where there's going to be danger at every corner. And because we already know when we're necessarily going to get hurt, there is little suspense. Because there's talking all about this stuff, but I know unless there's a save screen, nothing's going to happen. And that eliminates a lot of like jump scares or anything like that. Again, this game isn't necessarily visually appealing. Games with these bare basic graphics can be disturbing, but we haven't really seen anything yet until we get to this scene. And so this is a little more exciting, as you'll see in a bit, but we're presented essentially with a puzzle right now. That we have a bunch of dolls lined up facing what looks to be an electric chair. And so at this point you get a little, you're able to see the future a bit. This game doesn't play it hard and fast in terms of twists, at least not yet. And so you can assume that we're going to be interacting with the people, and that one of the two is going to be electric chair, most likely Zach because he's hardy and we don't know how Rachel is with, electricity and whatnot. The hard part, though, is getting this all going. Because I know that I need to, at this point, I know I need to interact with the electric chair. Okay, let's find any items about the room that I'll maybe need to use later on. Most of the information you find by touching the context-sensitive buttons doesn't really matter, which is a bummer because it should revolve around maybe developing tone or establishing a greater puzzle, but that's not so much. Right now, I talk to him because I think that's what you're supposed to do. But basically, I'm trying to touch anything and everything. There's cabinets lined up against the wall. There's the chair that's right there. And we once again know that something smells like burning. And I see if I have anything that can work. And nothing. I have a filthy rag, basically. So, checking to see if anything matters with the various dolls. And I'm kind of at a loss here. What exactly do I do? So, when all else fails, talk to him once more. try to interact with the rag, but that's not going to do anything. I keep these items in my inventory, and what I've noticed with other parts is that some of these items are used once and they don't matter. They just take up your inventory space, which is a bit of a bummer because they act as red herrings more than anything. It doesn't add any complexity. I'm being very aggressive towards this game right now, when in reality I do feel like this stage has improved it immensely. You'll also find over time that this level's massively bigger, and so that bodes well for the rest of the series, but we gotta see. So I've done everything, and basically I just need to talk to him again. That was it. So that's a bummer, because I could have gone way faster. So she doesn't know anything, and it's all about clues, and so you basically gotta talk again and again and again. Rachel and him talk about that there's no evidence, and so nothing really happens. Until, by a pure rash decision, Zach decides to sit in the electric chair because he would have no idea what electric chair is, supposedly, and then the game starts. Well, actually, I thought it did. So we talk to him again, and there we go. But that chair, what about this chair? It's dangerous, Zach, and you should know that's bad. And then the minute he realizes it's bad, he's locked in place. And so this is where we do look at another interesting part of story is how do you progress it? We have the villain finally reveal herself, which is supposed to be, the big reveal. We have a name to the face or a face to the name or whatever. I don't even think she's said her name yet. But we have that little flash to know that things are ramping up in addition to this music in the background. I do think the music is actually pretty good. It's not incredibly novel, but it does set the tone rather well. And so you have this all set up. She says that's basically a test, and he will begin to be shocked like none other. This is where we have our fantastical thinking and believe that he can survive how many volts are now being coursed through his brain. But I was going back to the story, and you want a catalyst for this conflict. Obviously, some person had to sit in the chair for the story to start, and the route they went ultimately was to have Zach sit in it stupidly, just kind of walk into the trap because he has no brains otherwise. I think that's cheap because, again, we need to see a broader range of character without him just being the dumb person. If he walks into every trap because he's so stupid and that progresses the story, it feels like they're not trying very hard. I guess it could have come to the point there that there's a choice that he could have sat in the chair or not, that the two of them have to decide, but that's not present here. So we'll go with just the fact that Zach's an idiot. And now the game begins. So things ramp up a little bit as you have these characters start moving. And you'll see that we'll get the safe spot pretty quick, I believe. I stopped there for a bit, so I'm trying to figure out everything I need to do to make this work. I'm looking at the heads to see if there's any differences. And we decide which save to go over. And that one. So, it begins, and now I know that I can die. This game was pretty, not unforgiving, but it required that you knew what you had to do in order to survive. It gave you little leeway, but in this sense, you act pretty quickly. And so that's where my suspense begins right now. Fortunately, this game doesn't have long retries or loading times, so even if I did die, it wasn't so much a problem. So we begin, and the first thing you notice is that you touch every head that's not moving. And so this is the kind of see the difference kind of game, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just used in many video games. We haven't seen it yet in this game, so that's a good thing. And so it can be used as a little puzzle, whatever. So he's going around, he gives you occasional messages to show that he's dying, but there's really no rush. We turn it back and we retreat to the next cutscene. And bam, we somehow figure out that the current is weakening. I don't know how she knows that the current is weakening though. Most people don't see those little bars of green flashing over a person, and I don't think that works. And so the next one is we figure out which of the heads are messed up. So any head that has a head loose or is looking in a different direction, we get rid of. It's about at this point that I realized it's not as dire as I thought it was. I'm able to see the heads pretty clearly, and as long as I'm going at a jogging pace and not touching the wrong ones too much, I'm going to get this accomplished. So he still makes his comments to show that you need to hurry, but there's not so much suspense in that sense. And even here, I'm messing up because I'm choosing the wrong head. It's taking me a while to figure out what's the difference. And so I know that's these other two heads, and I finally get a hold of them. So that's the game so far. You'll see me continue with it. The biggest problem that I gripe about here is that I have to do each head on its own. I have to go through a dialogue box, and that really breaks up the action, because if I'm reading the stuff, theoretically the game should still be going. We have no timer to indicate when all things blow up, so there's very little suspense. In the next video you'll see that changes up a bit, and that's in the favor of the game. And perhaps I should be a little more positive. I already touched that earlier in this video, because all games are going to have their issues. So again, right here we have this scythe that we obviously have to grab, but because the scythe is on the other side and it's hot, well, I gotta see what I can have. And thankfully they told me I should look in my bag. So I decided to use the rag, and now I have a fancy dancy little scythe with me. So all the heads appear the same, and so how do I finish it? By cutting off all their heads. So kind of all the puzzles that we had before are gone. But because I now have a scythe, I'm very slow. And not only now do I have to toggle each of the characters, but I'm treated to this blackout screen where I cut off the head. This becomes extremely tedious to me. Even to the point where when I'm talking over it, I don't feel like I have much to say, just because I'm doing the same thing over and over again. And previously, where there was a puzzle, there's none right now. I just gotta rush while Zach continues to throb in the back. So again, I just talked about being positive and I criticized the game already. And I guess I really need to see something important for this to work, or something out there outrageous or unsettling. And I guess it's unsettling to cut off dolls' heads when they have similar blood on the floor. I also don't really get how this works meaning-wise, because supposedly we're supposed to be all punished, but we're killing all the people viewing the punishment, and so that means we don't have to be punished anymore. Like, I guess that's the thing, because theoretically, if you kill all witnesses or people who think you did something bad, you're not in the wrong anymore. I think that's a moral we should learn, is it's not bad if no one knows. So we'll just say that's the moral of this first chapter. So we're going to be wrapping up soon right here, because I originally intended this video to be relatively short, around 30 minutes. That's where I'd like it to be. 20 minutes is more ideal, just because you're not going to get people's attention spans for very long. And so I thought I could do something quicker, because I was, at the 18-minute mark, but that's not the case. So we're going to see a little story of her response. Let's think what she says. She's still in good spirits. So at this point, you imagine that she's okay with us living probably until the third punishment, and then she's probably going to start sweating. But, no, she's the villain. And if all things don't go badly, there's other floors, which we should really get to later too, because there's this whole setup. But each of them seems so intent on killing me that they'll kill themselves to get through. So is it any wonder that people get through? And I can't imagine anybody else getting through these challenges. This one by itself needed 2 people, so anyone else going through is shit out of luck. Excuse my French. And she gave back his scythe. and we'll talk about more of those puzzles. But everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for letting me have this little experiment that you see right now. And hopefully we can keep that momentum as we move on to the next video. So, if you liked it, good. If you didn't, well, you suck. Otherwise, well, bye.